A new season brought forth by a new year. What new dangers, what new knowledges, what discoveries, and what stories will we uncover? For all of these and more can be found here at the Lair of Omnisci in this, our third season. Hi everyone, I'm Rob, and I'm here in the Lair of Omnisci for Rob Reviews. Today we're reviewing Episode 3 of the Nerds, Dungeons & Dragons Adventure crossover, which can be had by buying a Nerds, Dungeons & Dragons product and taking a picture of the proof of purchase, sending it to the website. You get to download the adventure for free. The first one was a solo adventure, one player, one game master, for a rogue. The second was for a ranger. The third is for the fighter, Orange. And Orange is a beefy fighter. He's got extra hit points to help him because he's going to be fighting for his story, so he needs a little bit more durability for a solo. And all in all, he's a solidly put together fighter. No problems here. Classic longsword and shield, sword and board is probably one of the most sensible combinations for a starting character. The adventure starts off with a bang as your character gets ambushed right away. You get to fight two opponents at once, too. You're a fighter, so, you can use some of your abilities, your second wind, basically, to heal. But it's up to you how you fight, and this kind of shows off, showing exactly the combat and showing how to engage in a fight. Now, with two opponents against one player, you'd think this would be kind of a tough job, but realistically, that fighter is a beast. His armor class is really high, and I expect most of the time this would play out. The fighter will end up winning this fight. But if it doesn't, if the fighter goes down, and remember too, by the way, nerds are these, minus the ears. They have two legs, no arms, but fighter here has a shield, he's got a little helmet on, and he can use a sword too. So, and walk, still, it's weird, but it's just a crossover promotion. Suspend your disbelief for a little bit. And again, too, these characters, they may be nerds, but they're just reskinned characters, so don't sweat it too much. So if your nerd wins, cool. Either you've killed the two bad guys, or you've taken prisoners if you knock them out. Note that the game really doesn't give you options on how to knock them out, so maybe your players might not even know that that's an option, but I've always kind of favored the idea of being able to biff an opponent unconscious rather than necessarily killing them out of hand. Yeah, swords don't have a safety option, really, but, an experienced adventurer you would think would know to be able to, knock somebody goofy with the flat of the blade against the side of the head or something, and in that way try to take a prisoner. And the fighter has subterranean charisma, so interrogating the bad guys at the end is a shot in the dark at best. But the good news is you get approached by the NPC who's kind of been behind the whole scene, setting everything up. And you're told, hey, these people are causing the problem in the town of Harmony where we live. That problem being all the color is being drained out of it, which is horrible. And we can fix this. I belong to a secret society that can fix this, but we need the magical gems to do that. And I know where one of the gems is, the peach gem. Cool. Would you be interested in getting that for me? I think it's weird that they use peach as a color. You would think they would mostly stick to the colors of the rainbow. Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. But no, we're going peach. Okay, that's fine. Not a real problem, just kind of a weird thing to notice. So your fighter presumably goes to do it and even gets offered a cash reward at the end. But here's the thing. He gives you a fireball to start with. That's right. You get a necklace of missiles with one fireball left on it that you can pluck and throw. Boom! Full force fireball. This is kind of a foreshadowing of what's coming. Might not really be fair in most regards. For a number of reasons. The biggest reason, though, is that this adventure throws some kind of questionable creatures at you for a first level solo adventure. And one player adventure, I should say. Not solo, you do need a game master to run this adventure. So they give you a fireball to start with, which is an odd choice, I find. But, as I said, there are some nasty monsters, so okay. So first of all, you get sent directly off. Here's this mausoleum you have to go to. First of all, you have to find a way in. Okay, a little rooting around. There's certainly been adventures where the entrance to the dungeon itself is hidden. Sure, Tomb of Horrors being a classic example. I've had a group that just couldn't find it and left. We're the lucky ones, I guess. But for the most part, you have to find the dungeon first before you can go into the dungeon. Fine, okay. Then, the first creature that you take on, and I'm not going to spoil it in case you play it, the very first creature outside of the initial encounter that you have, that things are getting bad, is a very nasty creature. Something I would not throw a first level character against. The fact is, it can one-shot you. And even though it doesn't have a really good chance of doing that, considering the fighter has a really good armor class, all you need to do is hit, and that fighter is going to be crippled. Now, yes, the fighter has a second wind to get hit points back. Fair. But yeah, that's a nasty thing to throw at your character in a first level thing. Now, yes, they do have a fireball. They're a fighter. If they throw it at the creature, they're probably going to get killed in the explosion. First level fighter cannot survive a fireball unless you roll absolutely terrible for damage. But I digress. I mean, this has a lot of opportunity for failure all over this. And the fighter really doesn't have a backup on this. So, now, does the fighter have to fight this creature? Technically, the fighter could probably get away from it, and it may not be necessary to even fight it, but kind of a brutal thing to throw right off the bat. Certainly a choice I wouldn't have made designing this adventure, but so be it. Let's face it, a lot of the story in this has been about how to handhold your players going through this. That creature, as I said, pretty scary against one person. I would definitely throw that creature up against a group at relatively low level, because even if somebody falls, you can pick them back up again and, keep fighting. But against one person, that's kind of on the rough side myself. And then enters into the Loot Fest. This adventure, more than any other, has all kinds of loot that you can gather. For the fighter. Okay, sure, whatever. This is definitely one that emphasizes getting stuff and looting. This is the better example of a dungeon out of the previous two by a pretty good margin. You have a chamber, you've got doors, you boot the door, you either loot or you get into a fight or something. Yeah. Now the other monster that's in here, really, again, pretty nasty foe, all things considered. It is presented in such a way that the fighter can win, potentially. Especially if he decides to throw that fireball at that point. The fighter could definitely win. But potential for it going off the rails and just not ending well is there. It's a fairly strong possibility, especially if your fighter can't do anything outside of I rush forward and I attack to hit it with my sword. Again, no spoilers, but it's it's a famous kind of monster, and it's fine. If you defeat the monster, hey, you get the treasure you're looking for, and some other nice treasure. Honestly, this game, it's so much good stuff in it for treasure, but the encounters I just don't. If you're going to play a fighter in a solo adventure, I favor kind of power trips for low-level fighters. Let them demonstrate that their fighting skills are so good. So some of the monsters that you saw in some of the other ones, like twig blights and kobolds and things that you saw in the earlier adventures, fighters eat those kind of encounters up. If they can fell a foe in just, like, say, 1 or 2 strikes and watch blows bouncing off their armor, and if they get hit, ow, it hurts, but they're not down yet, that's a good adventure for a fighter to be in. That's a good experience for them. As opposed to monsters that are really kind of on the scary side and not intuitive at all to fight. It's a little rough. It's a little rough. But all things considered, again, an experienced player might really have a pretty decent time with this. The encounters are manageable with a little tactical expertise, a little knowledge on when to run, when to think of other ways of fighting rather than just moving up and clubbing something with your weapon. I think this has a good chance of being a solid adventure. I would probably have waited till the fighter was 2nd level, though, for the monsters that were in here, just to give them a little bit more of a safety net. That's me. Clearly, I'm not on the Dungeons design team, but all things considered, I think this is kind of a little weaker. They wanted to show off some cool monsters, and that's fine, but I just don't think 1st level characters would be appropriate for the monsters that are in here. Or a solo adventure against these kind of monsters. 1st level group against these monsters, say 3 people, fine. This would have been a neat little encounter. Solo might be a little bit much. On the other hand, Lady Luck and Admiral Awesome are at your shoulders. This is something that you can get through. And honestly, if a player gets through this adventure without any kind of help or anything, they've earned that experience. They earned that gem. Yeah, there's no gimmick to this. It's a couple of good fights, quite honestly. And more power to them. But this is not one that I think should be just thrown at players willy-nilly, one size fits all. You got to tailor the encounters a little bit more. I would probably have changed up the creatures, but, to yourself be true. The fighter himself, I thought, was made pretty well, all things considered. I think the fact that it's a loot fest is fine. The dungeon, pretty basic, but again, as I've said in the previous video, these are great little quick hits if you want a person to go out to do something. Just strip out the gem, and you can replace that with any other MacGuffin you're looking for. The fighter really wants a magical weapon, and it's rumored to be here. Send them off to go get it. Cool. They get the magical item they're looking for, and they feel like they've earned it rather than just plunk down some coins. I'm fine with that, especially in a low magic campaign. I think that's a really good way to get your players to take charge of their own loot, is by having them look for the stuff they really want and go out and find it. All things considered, I really didn't have any major issues with this, except almost relying on the fireball gimmick to get you through one of the 2 encounters in the story. The other encounters that you fight are just straightforward fights. The fighter probably should win. And then there are 2 encounters that almost beg you to use the fireball to get by them. Okay, I roll my eyes, but okay, if you must. But yeah, all in all, it's not a bad thing. Again, you get a 2nd level fighter as a solo, I'd be fine with it. A small little group going through, you don't need to modify very much. And there's no oddball items or creatures that have to be reskinned. Classic dungeoning, classic D&D monsters, which again might have annoyed their nerd overlords a little bit, because there's no candy references in this one. Nothing selling the candy as being totally awesome, or at least very, very little. Just a little flavor text, and that's about it. Flavor text. That's about it. So, again, with this one, might be something you'd really enjoy, just as a tactical challenge of getting in against some nasty monsters and figuring out the best way to defeat them. Personally, it's okay. I do put it kind of behind The second one, I think that one's a little bit more cleverly written. And even the first one to some extent, a player has an option to use their brains more so than just their fighting ability. This one is purely about rolling dice to get through the solution. And showing a little bit of judgment on when you throw your fireball, because at some point in this adventure you probably are. Now, one other thing I will say about this, not only do you get some decent magical loot and you start with a fireball, if you get through this dungeon without using the fireball, now you have a fighter with a fireball. And if he meets up with the rest of the group, that might be really significant. Because again, he's a first level character with an 8d6 fireball. That might really change one of your encounters if they can get through this dungeon without using it. Just saying it's a possibility, so bear that in mind. A fighter with good dice can defeat these encounters, so if they do that, might be something to really think about. Alright, anyhow, we've got more adventures to look at, so eventually we'll get to 4, 5, 6, and the group meetup in 7, Restoring Harmony. So, thanks for joining me. Until next time, I'm Rob, been here in the Lair of Omnici, and until that next session, farewell.